What's up, Will?
Happy Friday, Jordan. How are you?
Happy Friday. Happy Friday Flow. I'm excellent. I'm excellent. I'm really, really excited about this special edition of the Friday
Ooh,
Flow. Yeah. Did you know it was a special edition?
I do now. So now I'm excited. Double excited.
Guess what we're talking about today? Just take a wild guess.
Does the first word begin with an A and the last word end with an I?
That's correct. And it's a special edition because today Will and I are just going to talk about how we use ChatGPT and AI tools in general in both work and non-work. And then there's going to be a little special announcement for all core Workflow employees, and we'll get to that when we get to that. See what
All
happens.
right, let's do it.
Let's do it. Will, do you want to start? Do you want to kick us off? We're just going to be going back and forth on just different ways we use it and try to give some inspiration to not just people in Workflow, but now that we're publishing this outside of Workflow, how do you and I use AI in general?
I'm glad you asked. This has been a really interesting part of, I think, learning more about what these tools are. Obviously, everyone shares takes and hot takes and things like that on things like Twitter, and you can learn a lot via what people are doing. But actually, I think it's really important to see within a workplace if someone just says, use ChatGPT and they tell that to someone in operations or they tell that to someone in design, like the first thing they're going to be like, well, what should I use it for? And so I think it's good to come together just to show some random examples. This is definitely not like what we spend all our time doing and using, but I think it's good to just show some random examples of how we utilize these beyond just like the hardcore coding, cursor AI or anything like that. This is just like these are my go-tos. So I thought, yeah, let's just dig in. Let's share some stuff that we've done in like the last week or so. All right, here's my ChatGPT. So I actually, funnily enough, I didn't do this just for this show. I have up on my top bookmarks Replit, Claude, and ChatGPT because I actually use them so frequently now that I have them as my like go-tos right on my bookmarks bar. And this is a just a random sort of prompted thought space that I've been doing, randomly working with extracting data from uh, a accounting, I don't think what the word is, form that we've had to submit to our Spanish tax people, and we need to get that into an Excel file. And this is like crazy things that we do. So very commonly, like I just ask it, like, hey, give me the Excel formula. This is a number that's has a decimal in it and a comma at the end. This is not the way that we do it in America. So if you pasted raw text into Excel, for instance, this would be wrong. It wouldn't show as a number. So I just often ask it things like, give me an Excel formula, and it just gives you an Excel formula. I also had this data, and I was like, hey, this data's in Spanish. It was a PDF, so I couldn't just like copy it into a Google sheet. So I actually just took a screenshot of it, and I was like, hey, extract this data, and it goes and it runs a little query itself, and then it gives you a CSV output afterwards, which is pretty sweet. And then I was like, all right, these are now all like, these are Spanish words. I don't even know what these are. Give me the English of these. And so then it will just like give you back, the English of these. And this is like a very typical thing. This might have taken, 10 minutes to think about the Excel formula. It might have taken you 20 minutes to manually copy and paste this stuff out of a PDF. It certainly would have taken a lot longer if you had to use like Google Translate, which is probably the old way I'd do it. And I just like paste in a line at a time. And now you can do things with like, oh, actually give me in this certain structure and it will go and do that for you. So I think translations, Excel formulas, extracting data out of PDFs is actually something that I find super good at doing. If it's like a table form and you can't otherwise do that easily yourself, I think this is a really easy, simple way of doing something. This might have taken half an hour before. Now it takes like 5 minutes to do this. So like that's a really easy, simple win for people that are like constantly working in Google Sheets and maybe having random data in places that they need to manipulate. What do you think, Jordan?
That's awesome. No, that's a great example. I'm going to give another example that is Google Sheet oriented. I think actually you one upped me with just putting in a PDF of a table because it's like super unstructured because literally just a flat image. So then it's like going in and OCRing it and doing all this other crazy stuff. But sometimes I will start making a spreadsheet in Google Sheets or Airtable or whatever, and I want it to essentially fill in some columns for me for whatever reason. I'm going to give an insanely dumb general example here, but hopefully it'll inspire some people to think about how could this apply to their day to day. Again, we're not just talking about work. This could be anything. So as many of you know, I'm having a wedding coming up in December. I use this kind of action all the time for just like so much stuff. So let me share my screen. Cool. Can you see this Google Sheet?
Yes.
Cool. So I've made an insanely dumb, I'll get rid of that. I've made an insanely dumb spreadsheet. And the goal of this is to basically fill in the rest of it. I want to know what's the average weight of this animal? What's the mile per hour of this animal? And then give me a fun pet name. It's really stupid. It's obviously not useful, but you can imagine this could be so much, like just so many different applications. I'm literally going to just copy this, as easy as that, go into ChatGPT and say, finish this spreadsheet for me. I'm going to paste that in. Sure, here you go. And I can literally just
Nice. Look at
download
that.
this. I mean, Featherface, interesting. Grizzle for the bear name. Slow Mo for our sloth. That's amazing. Also, I love this. This is just so slow. It's incredible. But that's like one really, really random, but I think useful example of just how fast that was. Like before, if I actually had to make that legit spreadsheet, I'd have to go into Google, I have to actually do all this research. That was just like that. It was like incredibly fast, and you can see what kind of applications you can use that for, just your work and play.
I think that's awesome. And I think the thing to call out here is how you really don't have to give it like hardly any context for it to like know what you are asking for. And so we're actually like, because of how predictive it is, don't worry about even like spelling mistakes. Like you can spell the sentence completely wrong and it will know what you mean. Like it's wild
Yeah,
how you can quickly do things. So it's doing so much, you don't need to really overthink your prompting. And because it's so quick as well, you could put it in one way, and if it doesn't quite give you what to do, you can just say, no, actually do this, and it will just like quickly do that as well. I think the really great thing that it's showing there as well is how it can come up with things that are going to feel like interesting. It's using it looks like it's being thoughtful, right? Coming up with those clever names. And I think that's like obviously the power of LMs. And so it's like really seems like it's very creative. And this is another great example that I actually used last week or so. We're creating the rubric for interviewing for our latest controller role. And so here I'm asking, okay, let me think through some core competencies with you. So rather than me coming to it and saying, this, I've had an hour thinking session and these are the core competencies I truly care about. I'm just actually going to start off by not even giving it. I'm just going to say, hey, I want core competencies that controllers need. And then I want some sample questions that are going to test for those competencies. And so, it's prompted it. It's given me financial reporting and compliance and why it matters. I didn't even ask for like why it matters, but it gave me that. It gave me some sample questions. It's broken. It's given me one, two, three. It's given me a whole host, 9 adaptability and problem solving. So it's given me 9 different core competencies. I can then take those as very thoughtful prompts to be like, okay, this is good. Maybe I don't care so much about this one. And then maybe we want to focus on here. And it's given me a couple of sample questions for each of them. I was like, yeah, they haven't actually hit this competency is what I really care about. It's like they need to be very dependable, trustworthy. And so then it's gone and added me a 10th and an 11th core competency as well. And then I'm like, okay, that's not enough questions because I want to make this question bank larger so that my other interviewers like Jordan and team can go in and feel like they've got plenty of questions to ask on certain competencies. And so now it's taken each of those groups and it's going to give me another 3 questions. And I could ask, give me 10 questions for each of these competencies. And it's just going to keep generating really, really good. They're not just the same kind of question re-asked. It's actually coming at it from different angles, testing for different pieces within it. And This again would have taken a few hours to really sit down and think through and develop, but actually we can build a very solid rubric for how we want to interview a certain role with very crystal clear questions, just again from two or
Yeah.
three prompts.
No, I think you brought up a really good point, and that's you have an intention going into the conversation you're having with ChatGPT, but it doesn't need to be fully fleshed out. I think in when ChatGPT first came out, you would, or I personally would spend a lot of time on my prompt. What am I going to ask ChatGPT to do for me? And I would have like everything written out. Like I would spend a good amount of time. Now I kind of go to it and say, hey, I need help brainstorming X, Y, and Z. And then boom, that's the start of the conversation. It'll then reprompt me with some specific questions. It's actually asking me better questions than I ask myself. And it helps me come up with the content and the context for what will help it give me what I want, right? It's like it's helping you, it's a conversation as opposed to a prompt. And so that conversation really does end up with a much better result than if you were to just single shot, just give it like all of the information up front. So that's super cool. I will give you an example of something I did for, right, I continue to do at Flowflow. So I think it's super helpful for me and for my team, and for actually, I think sometimes for the whole company in some circumstances. So we do weekly syncs and we do weekly eng syncs. Sorry, weekly syncs with the whole company, and we do eng syncs just with the tech side. We've done it for a long time. They take a little while. We kind of go around like round robin style. Everyone talks about what they're working on. And the last few weeks, I can't say it's perfect yet, but we're iterating on it. I send out a form, and the form is linked to a Google Sheets. That's just an immediate automation you can just do on Google Sheets. That has nothing to do with GPT. But I ask the same questions we ask when we usually do our round robin. What did you do this week? What are you working on? What are you going to work on next? Right. So everyone fills it out. It's like 15, 20 people fill it out, and then it compiles into a spreadsheet. I take that spreadsheet, put it into ChatGPT, and I say, here's all the responses from my team. Make me a script that I can read that summarizes everything. And it is so concise, but it also is so hyper explanatory at the same time. Like it just gets to the point of what really needs to be said. And I actually read the whole thing straight through. So instead of everyone bopping around, which ends up taking quite a while, I actually just read the whole thing, and I can stop on certain points and ask questions. Other people can do the same. And it's become super, super efficient. There's one added little fun piece on that is I also use Tavis, which is like an avatar company where you can do text to video, and it'll actually have somebody look like they're actually speaking the script, and I send that out afterwards. So after I do the whole thing, at the end of the meeting, they actually get a recording, which usually ends up being 3 or 4 minutes, and so they can rewatch it if they want to. And it's just a very attractive man who is reciting the exact thing that I recited, probably a lot better than I did. We're trying to come up with a name for him. You can also on Tavis make your own avatar, which I've done. Maybe I'll show that in a later video. But anyway, I think that's a super cool automation, and clearly couldn't be done without this making the really concise and easy script that just compiles all this information.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's an awesome use case for it. Oftentimes we do, now that we're a remote organization, a lot of companies are, you end up with a lot of async meetings, or you have meetings where you're just discussing the state of play of certain projects. And so I think it is super valuable to have these assets that can really help note take or summarize or come up with action points for you from those meetings. And we're certainly like trying out more and more things. I think that the new thing that we were playing with this week has been Notebook LM from Google, which has been awesome. And they have a really fun deep dive podcast. And so you can add any kind of source to this. They can be really, really large in length. So what I think is super interesting is that there doesn't seem to be a context window length, whereas oftentimes for other things, you have pretty serious limits around that. So you can upload PDFs after Google Docs after Google Docs, and it then makes a 10-minute or so deep dive on that subject that you put in. It's still new, so you can't prompt it in the direction that you want it to head and things like that, but it's been pretty amazing. It's remarkably concise and it doesn't hallucinate in that regard. The people are very likable, so it's actually becomes a really interesting way of listening to something, and I actually think this could be really useful for things like async updates that are currently maybe now text blocks in Slack, and you do have time to look at it, then you look at it. This might be a way of also being able to listen to it on the move, things like that. So I think it's a really interesting, exciting new realm that's kind of been unlocked even this week. It feels like every week we have a new unlock, a new something else got dropped.
Do you have a demo or no? No demo of that one?
Yeah, I have a demo. Yeah,
I
I
was
can.
gonna say, I was gonna say, what I think is the coolest part about this is just how it's presented. So it is clearly a huge difference to what it was before, where there's two people talking to each other about the content. So that's something I haven't heard before. So yeah, let's give it a little demo. I love this. You want to give some backstory on what this actually is,
Sure. So
or no?
we've uploaded just a bunch of a bunch of files just from a purely testing perspective. And there's a bunch of complex rules that some of our data specialists in our human in the loop program need to understand. And oftentimes it can be pretty complicated to understand all this stuff. So we thought, hey, let's just try and listen to what it sounds like with these interested podcast hosts talking about something that could otherwise be quite a cumbersome learning process. Let's have a listen. We've got an example here of what we wanted to show with Notebook LM. We have a bunch of sources. This is just built as a test to understand uh, what might be otherwise a very complicated group of instructions that we ask some of our data specialists to learn and understand. And then we just wanted to see how interesting the podcast hosts could make otherwise quite a data intensive piece of info to learn. Let's
Yeah.
listen.
But how do they actually figure out the correct PCP for every single product?
Well, the guide says to start with the item name provided by the merchant. Then they consult the taxonomy glossary, which is like this massive dictionary of product categories to make sure everyone's speaking the same language data wise.
And they actually added a whole new section for PCP guidelines this past July, specifically for meat, fish, and prepared meals.
He did, which just shows how much things change and how the guidelines constantly evolve.
It's a living document. I noticed they also emphasize using information from what they call MX, meaning the merchant, when selecting the PCP.
So there you
That's
go.
insane. I love it. It's so crazy. I mean, honestly, it's like when you a lot of things that you consume nowadays are in podcasts. I mean, I know you and I for sure, but I do know a lot of other people have adopted that. And like, if I go on a walk, oftentimes I'm not listening to music anymore. I am listening to podcasts, and consuming it in that style where there's like two people kind of conversing with each other is just wildly easier to listen to, I feel like, than if it was just one person giving me the rundown, right? It's like, or like even summarizing what that entire content is and actually just like regurgitating that to me, it's not as exciting, right? So I think like if you just went on a walk in 10 minutes, you can distill all of this complicated information, by listening to this like mini podcast. I think it's incredible.
Yeah, I think they've done a really great job. This again is V1 of this. I'm sure you can prompt it in different directions that you want. It doesn't always have to be a deep dive. Maybe you want it just to be a very specific piece. But the team's working super hard on it. I can see with the tweets that they put out, and there's a lot of good live back and forth feedback that's happening on there with the actual product leads from Google that are running it. So it's really exciting. People are very interested in it. And I don't know how it works on the back end, but it's pretty ingenious that it's taking so much content and it's being able to distill that down into 10 minutes. I will say that the chatbot within Notebook LM is great as well. So you can just ask it a question against any of those sources, and it's going to give you answers. And then in line in those sources, in those answers, it's going to give you little references back to the source. And so you hover over the reference and it'll give you a little snippet of the actual live source document that it had. So again, this is really great if we think about the need for some of our data specialists that need to understand a whole lot of rules or style guide requirements and they don't quite remember it, or if they're onboarding, they can say, how do I do this? How do I think about this? And they can ask against this notebook and get answers that are actually backed by references, rather than the old way probably would have been like Control F, trying to find something in a 40-page Google Doc, all those kind of things. I think this is like a novel new approach for learning and for also like a co-pilot for doing the actual
Yep.
work, which I think is an awesome idea as well for like operational
Yeah.
means.
Yeah, yeah, pretty incredible. Well, let me fire off a few smaller use cases that I have, just to give just a few more examples. I use the actual ChatGPT app on my phone, my iOS app. It's got an incredible voice integration, so you can talk to it, it talks back. It's just as if you're talking to a person. So, like, some examples are if I'm in the grocery store and I'm trying to, pull out some ingredients for a recipe I'm working on, and I go to this just happened like yesterday. So go to the produce or the vegetables, and I need a jalapeno, and there's like 10 jalapenos, and they're all like different. I'm like, which jalapeno do I need for this recipe? And I'm just talking to him like, hey, which which jalapeno do I need? And I take a picture of the whole section, and it kind of knows what it has there, and it'll tell me the exact jalapeno I need for this recipe, or like the ideal one, right? So just like a super random life hack. It's very easy. Another thing, obviously, on our weekly all hands, we do a lot. We do trivia, name that song. I do like a bunch of these little stupid fun things. GPT helps me immensely with that. Kind of give them an audience. They give me some suggestions. I hone in on like one or two things I think might be fun that week. Give me some more suggestions. Very easy, free flowing, works well. Last example I'm going to give you is I needed to find out if a hotel was dog friendly. So I just put in the URL of the hotel, and I said, is it dog friendly? And it searched it. It said, no, it's not, and here's why. I clicked the link, and it brought me to the page of the policy. So just like a really simple thing that probably would have taken me 3 to 5 minutes. I'm not saying that I couldn't do it, but it was just at the tip of my fingers. Just so easy. So these are all things that I think Will and I are like really big into just thinking of differently now. Everything now is now like, can I just ask ChatGPT to do it for me? It's so much easier.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I know a lot of people use Perplexity. I don't use it that much, and I think I should go back and try it again. I'm sure there's a lot of improvements since I used it like a year ago or so when I was trying it out. But yeah, to that point, I do use ChatGPT a lot on my phone just to ask random questions. Like maybe I'm listening to a podcast and someone mentions something that's interesting, or I'm watching a video, or I see a tweet or something about something. I might just go and chat GPT and say, hey, what's this? And it's going to give me a quick summary about what it is, which is really helpful when you can't remember the words to Google. It's actually, in my mind, better for Googling things than Google is today. There was a example. We're doing some design work on our website, and I couldn't remember, or maybe I'd never heard of what it's called, but there's a type of UI design where things are the UI of a website or an app isn't actually the app itself. It's like a see-through version of it. So maybe it's just the outline of the app, and I couldn't remember what that's called. So I just pasted it in. I say, hey, this is like a thing. This is a trend. And then it says, oh yeah, that's a glassy UI, or that's like whatever that term is. So again, like it's very good at getting it, even when you put in like half a question, and it's
Yeah.
usually pretty accurate at figuring that out, or it'll work with you to actually figure out what you mean. Again, another one I was trying to understand was what's it called when you have a sticky scroll? So you're scrolling down a website and it's going to pause and show something, and you keep scrolling, and eventually it replaces that content with the next content, but it's definitely kind of paused during that scrolling. It's called a sticky scroll. It's also got a couple other names. But again, if you Google that, like, hey, what's this thing? And you put two sentences together, you might get an answer, but it's only because someone else has put that into Reddit, and then that's been indexed, and then eventually you get to an answer. Whereas this is really a great way of figuring out things like that, which then you can then prompt you to deep dive into certain areas. So I like to use it for that a lot.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Any other examples you want to showcase before we
Yeah, I thought we could probably
push
close
on more?
on quickly talking about some of maybe our side projects. So I saw that you added something in the
Ooh,
doc. I have a little side project that I built for the company earlier this year, and that was to remember people's birthdays. So I was like, hey, I want a Slack bot that's going to be able to ping our Slack channel for everyone's birthdays, and I'm going to put everyone's birthdays in this Google Sheet, and then I'm going to expand it. Actually, I care about people's anniversaries. Can you ping when it's someone's anniversary as well? And so I had that happening, and occasionally I want to go and update it or tweak it, and I got it to like launch it into a Heroku app. I know, super, super cool. And then I wanted it to update again. So recently I pasted this new information into update, and also I was trying to try out O1 preview as well. So I was like, let's see what else it can do. I'm pasting in a Python script, but I'm also just pasting it in line. I don't care that it's the file attached. It doesn't need that structured content to be properly there for it to understand what it's asking for. What's awesome about Preview, it's actually going through and it's doing this chain of thought, which is actually supposed to be a lot better than 4.0 for certain tasks. So I wanted to try it out. And what I noticed when I got the updated Python script was that it actually changed some of the basis of what it had already given me 6 months earlier. And I hadn't asked it for that. I'd asked it to update it to do a specific new feature. But actually what it did, it went ahead and it changed some stuff. And so I was like, wait, why has it changed it? But then actually, if I look at this in chain of thought, it actually has like enhancing the script. And so it's adding it, and it realized that something maybe wasn't quite as secure. So then it's actually going through enhancing. I'm thinking about how to avoid hard coding sensitive values. This is something that it hard coded for me 6 months ago and didn't care about. And now it's actually gone back and thought, actually, let's split that out so it's not calling it on this side, and let's make it more manageable. So it was pretty funny that it's going to give me an update script that's actually more than what I asked for. And again, it took 58 seconds. It works really well. I get to, it tells you like what it did. And then it also, I can't remember because I don't use, I don't use Heroku very often. I'm not a coder. So then I'm just like, tell me how to use Terminal to update my Heroku app. And so then it's like, great, this is what you need to do. You need to go to your project. You need to log into the Heroku CLI. I was like, oh yeah, I remember this now. And so I got to remind me to prompt me again of how to do this. Again, it would take me 20 minutes probably of me Googling it of like, oh, damn, how do I get back into Heroku? I can't remember how to do this. I can't remember how to do git commits. And so here I'm just like, oh, it doesn't work. Let me paste in the error and it's going to tell me, okay, this is what you need to do. So I think like this is really helpful for me. I don't think I would have built a Slack app as a side project had I not had something like this to help me through it, because it's just not going to be worth my time.
Yeah, that's awesome. And also for the audience, that seems very daunting. That's definitely an advanced usage of it. So we're not telling you not to do it, but we're not. This podcast isn't really encouraging you to go code. It's more of how do you use GPT for your day to day. If you want to get super advanced, please do exactly as Will did, because it will walk you through step by step what you should do, and you don't even need to code. It's actually just giving you the code, telling you where to put it. So it is very cool, but yeah, I imagine that probably looked pretty daunting for some people. Okay, let me just give you my side project, and then we'll share a quick announcement, and then we'll be wrapped up. So my side project, also a little advanced. It's using some other things, not just GPT. I imagine I could have just had GPT give me the instructions of exactly how to make this app, but that wasn't entirely the point. So what I did is something I've wanted to do for a very long time, and that is I find most restaurants that I want to go to on Instagram. So as I'm scrolling through Reels or seeing people post stuff, I'm like, oh, that looks really cool. It's downtown or it's in the Mission, it's by my house, whatever. I want to go to it. So I usually save it. This is what I've been doing for the last 2 years. And then sometimes I'll go on Google Maps and put a little marker on a Google map. The problem is the marker is not connected to the Instagram Reel. So I don't know why I want to go there a year down the road. So what I wanted to do was make a way to save the videos to the markers. That's it. So simple. And so I used a series of things, not just GPT, but GPT was a huge part of it. This wouldn't work without it. And so now when I'm scrolling on Instagram and I see a reel and it's like, oh, I want to go there. I'll send that reel to a phone number I bought on Twilio. That will then trigger this little thing I built that'll ask GPT, where is that location? And it'll map it on this little map hub thing.
Wow.
And then when I click it, let's just click one, random one. I can then
There's a bid.
play the video. Look at
The
that.
hottest spots for dinner in San Francisco.
Copra. Hottest spots for dinner in San Francisco. Copra. See, I wouldn't even know if I didn't build this thing. So it took like a couple hours, and I can't say it's changed my life, but it's actually been useful. When Richard was in town, one of our product managers, him and I were walking towards somewhere we had to go, and I looked at my little map and I was like, oh, there's a thing right here. This is why we want to go here. What do you think? He's like, let's go. We went and it was awesome.
Amazing.
It works. Anyway, okay, so now to the special announcement. We want to make sure everyone has the ability to try all these things and the ability to be creative and think of new ways to use ChatGPT. So as of today, anyone that wants access to ChatGPT, ping us, ping me specifically, and you will get onto our enterprise account. Those that already have it, cancel it, and then get onto our enterprise account so that we can all be in one nice enterprise account together. You don't have to pay for it. We don't have to have like a million Brex cards paying for different chat GPTs. It'll all be centralized. And so please take advantage of this. I really, really strongly encourage everyone to slow down to speed up, right? You have a way of doing things. Slow down, think about how you can apply ChatGPT to this. Well, in the long run, it'll speed you up. I just guarantee it. I can't imagine a day without ChatGPT. Will, final thoughts?
I agree. I think that's an awesome thing that we're now doing, and I think it's great that we've leveled it up to the enterprise account with ChatGPT and OpenAI. We use them very heavily across our API as well. And one of the best things about having this as opposed to your own account is you get access. They roll out stuff. We've seen it this last couple of weeks. They roll out stuff pretty aggressively, and it normally goes to the enterprise accounts first. They normally have limits and things like that for some of the like single player accounts and things. So get rid of the single player account, move over to the enterprise account. There's so much that you can all learn. We're excited for this. And also it's going to be important because without giving too much away, we expect everyone to be able to utilize fully ChatGPT when it comes to our offsite in New Orleans in about a month. So very excited for that and more to come on that.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Will. Thanks everyone for watching. All our WoFlow people, all our non-WoFlow people. We'll see you hopefully next Friday, unless we punt it, which nope, we're not punting it. We're gonna do it next Friday. We're on
Every
it. Cool.
Friday.
Thanks
We're on
everyone.
it. Happy Friday,
Bye.
everybody.